Hi, and welcome to Keeping the Real in Real Estate. I'm Trisha Farron, real estate agent with William Ravis in Newtown, Connecticut. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to you buyers and answering the top 5 questions that I get asked all the time, whether you're a first-time buyer or a repeat buyer. So let's get started. The first question, which I get asked all the time, is how long does it take to buy a house? And that really depends. And I say it depends because it depends on how picky you are. If you were to pick a house today, submit an offer, and have it accepted today, you can reasonably expect that within 30 to 45 days, you're going to have those keys and you're going to be a homeowner. What takes long is finding the right property and getting your offer accepted. It's a seller's market out there, which means that there's not a whole heck of a lot of inventory. The pickier you are, the harder it's going to be to find something. Now, I am in no way suggesting that you should lower your standards. Certainly stick to the things that you have to have in a house, but maybe the geography will change, or maybe the budget will change, or maybe you don't have to have as much renovation as you want. Because if not, it's just going to take longer. It doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It will happen, especially if I'm your realtor. Ask my buyers. They close. We get to celebrate closing day. But you have to set your expectations that no, it may not happen. Now, miracles do happen. Believe me, I had a buyer recently. We met at one house that was hideous, and then we saw, I want to say it was like 6 houses on another weekend, about a week after the first meeting. We put in an offer. We waited till highest and best was all over and done. Her offer was accepted, and she's a homeowner right now. But I kept telling her, do not tell everybody that this is the way it is, because it could not be. It's possible that you're going to submit several offers before you get yours accepted. But know that it will happen. Somebody needs to have their offer selected. Why can't it be you? Especially if I'm your realtor. Okay. Question number 2, how much money do you need to buy a house? And this is such a broad question, but I think that it is unfortunate that many buyers think they only need to come up with a deposit, and that is just not so. So here you go for years saving up to have your 10, 15, 20% deposit, and now you forgot one small little budgetary item, closing costs. Do you know that closing costs could be anywhere between 3 to 5% of the purchase price? I know. Don't panic. It's not the end of the world, but it is something that you need to know from the start. Because quite frankly, if you don't, you're going to be in for a world of grief. But also, you don't necessarily have to put down 20%. I know. That could save you quite a bit. So let's do the math. So if what you're trying to do is purchase a home and you thought that you needed to put down 20%, your best bet is to speak to a mortgage lender. They're going to be able to tell you that what's going to be the best scenario for you on what your rate is, based on your financial situation, on how much you're putting down, the area you're purchasing, and the price that you want to buy. Maybe it's you just want to keep to a certain price point each month, and they can kind of work backwards to make sure that you're there. But it is very important that you understand there's going to be a percentage of the purchase price, whether it be as low as 3.5%, 3%, all the way to 20% or more. That's your deposit. That's the money you're telling the bank, I'm contributing this much, and I need the mortgage to be the balance of that. But there's also closing costs, and closing costs include your appraisal fee, any origination costs that you have with your mortgage lender, or points that you pay to buy down your rate, your lawyer's fees, prepaid taxes, prepaid insurance, prepaid interest. There could be a number of items that you have to pay up front for, and that's separate to your deposit. Your deposit is what you're contributing to the purchase price of the house. Your closing costs are what it takes to have all the different entities get together and secure your ability to purchase this loan. Some of it is filing fees, like silly things, being able to record your deed. There's a cost involved with that. That's what comes into your closing costs. So if you consider whatever it is you're going to put down towards the purchase price, plus 3 to 5% of your purchase price towards closing, you'll be better prepared. Just know it's best to talk to your mortgage lender before you do anything else. And that leads me to question number 3. What is the first step in buying a house? A lot of people think that going to an open house is the first step. While that's fun, we all like to go see houses. I do, I'm a realtor. But that's not the first step. The first step is to go talk to a mortgage lender to find out what you can afford, what you'll feel comfortable with, and what you'll get approved for your mortgage. Just because you're comfortable paying a certain amount doesn't mean that's what you'll actually get approved for. Your credit score has a lot to do with it. Your debt to income ratio has a lot to do with it. There's just many components that when a mortgage lender sits down and looks at your finances, they're going to come up and say, this is great, this is not so good, or we can work on this. And they kind of give you a plan. That's very helpful because what you don't want to do is go see a house you can't afford and fall in love with it. I've seen this happen, and what ends up happening is every other house that you see is compared to that original house, which is kind of setting yourself up for failure because, quite frankly, if it's at a different price point, that house may not have the attributes that you want because you've seen it in something else, something you can't afford. So while going to open houses is great, and certainly it's important to know what you feel comfortable paying for each month, you absolutely want to go speak with a mortgage lender. And I recommend go see a few. Go see your bank. Go see a mortgage broker. Go see somebody that was recommended to you by somebody else. They all have access to different programs. The rates might be different. The actual overall package might be different. You will be able to determine by comparing and contrasting which one's going to be more comfortable for you. And remember, everybody talks about the rate. I get it. Nobody wants to pay a high rate. But the rates are high right now. And historically, they're kind of average because there were rates in the 9, 10, 12, 15%. But yeah, there were rates in the 3%. Are we going to see that again? Probably no. So you have to deal with what you are presented with today. And today, the rates are somewhere between 6.5 and 7.5, depending on your credit score, depending on how much you're putting down, depending on your whole history, your financial history. So if you know that that's the case, you could also look at what's comfortable for you per month. And when the rates come down, refinance. But if it means you get the house that you want, so be it. Just be realistic with yourself and speak to the professional that's going to actually help you know for certain this is what you will get approved for. And then come to a realtor, like me, and tell me I can get approved for this amount. And then what we will do is we'll go ahead and look at homes that, in my case, I like to look at homes that are at least $25,000 less than what you can afford, your max, so that if you have to go up over asking price in your offer, there's room to play with. But what I don't want to see is you come back to me and say, I'm approved for $400,000, and you're looking at houses that are $410,000, $425,000, $450,000. I look at buyers that way, and I say, all you're doing is you're presenting yourself for heartache, because today's market, it's very infrequent when a home is going to come down in price unless there's something unsavory about it. It could be the location, it could be that it was an elevated price, it could be that it needs some work or has some other element that makes it kind of a quirky house that maybe not everybody's going to want. In those cases, then yeah, you could probably negotiate off the asking price. But most times you're not. You're either coming in very close to asking or above. So you certainly don't want to be looking at your high point of where your budget is. If you kind of bring that in just a few thousand, like I said, 25, 30, 40, 50,000 even, then it gives you room to play when it's time to negotiate. So question number 4, do I have to pay my realtor? That's an interesting question these days. So I'm sure you've heard that there is a lot going on with the National Association of Realtors and the Department of Justice and antitrust rules and all these terms that maybe you understand or maybe you don't. The reality is this. The National Association of Realtors was brought to task because business in government felt that they were not being as open as they should be about who and how, who pays and how it's paid commissions. And what really came of this is that it was a miscommunication as to how commissions were paid. And because of that, they got slapped on the wrist. Commissions are a fee that a realtor charges to serve their buyer or their seller. And those commissions, those fees are negotiable. What the discrepancy was is that everybody thought the seller had to pay and they had to pay a standard amount. That is not the case. If you hire an electrician to come to your house, that person is going to say, here's my credentials and this is my fee for fixing your electrical issue. There may be a charge for me to come in. There's going to be a charge for parts. There's going to be a charge for me to do the work. Whatever it is that they choose to do, they're going to set you up with a quote or an estimate as to what their fees are. If you hired a plumber, if you hired a landscaper, if you hired an architect, this would be the case. They're going to show you what their credentials are, and they're going to say, this is my fee to do what it is you're asking me to do. The same goes with real estate. Not all realtors are built from the same mold. We all come from different backgrounds, have different foundations of experience, and our skill sets will help or hinder you based on what your needs are. There are bad realtors out there, just like there's bad lawyers out there, and there's bad plumbers out there, and there's bad of every kind of service industry you can imagine. But there are stellar ones, some that have awards that they have won, some that have credentials that they have earned. There are all ranges of skills that are brought to the table for this particular service. And you need to decide whose service and whose set of skills make best sense for you to get to what your end goal is, which is to buy a house at the least amount of cost, with the least amount of stress and the least amount of risk. And that realtor will suggest a price based on what they feel they're worth. Together, you guys need to determine if that makes best sense. Now, going forward, it may be something that you can negotiate into a price. It may be something you can negotiate into your mortgage. But I need you to understand that it may not, and it may be something that you need to out-of-pocket pay for. Now, I'm going to kind of blend questions 4 and 5 together, because question 5 is, can't I just use the listing agent? Yes, you can. Is it the smart thing to do? No, it isn't. Why? Because the listing agent has signed a contract with the seller to say that they wholeheartedly and in all circumstances will protect the seller's interest. That's their contract. So why do you think it makes best sense to work with the listing agent to help you buy that property? Your interests are not their interests. And they have already negotiated a price of what their services are to the seller. So if you think you're getting that person for free, you're not. Because the efforts that are put into helping a buyer obtain a property versus the services that are required to have a seller sell their property are different. Even though the market and the mainstream media seems to think that they're the same, they're not. And when you blend those two together, there's no way you could possibly represent a seller and a buyer equally, even if you are the most ethical, most moral person out there. Because The whole goal is to get the seller to get the most amount of money for the least amount of risk, and the buyers the least amount of money for the least amount of risk. There's no middle. So as a buyer, it is vitally important. You are making a purchase for the most expensive thing you have ever purchased in your life. Why would you use the representation of the seller? It's kind of like going through a divorce and using your soon-to-be ex-spouse's attorney. Why would you do that? Because you think it could be amicable? But it's not. You want 100% of the attention given to you and your needs and interests be represented. And if somebody has that split loyalty, there's just no way you can get 100%, because at least 50% is going to the other side. So while I know that there are plenty of buyers who think that it makes best sense to go to the listing agent because maybe they know more about the house, or maybe they have some insight, or maybe you think that they'll reduce their commission because they've got both sides. Any agent worth the name on their license won't do that, because they know the effort that it is to represent a buyer is 100% different than the effort it is to represent a seller. And I'm going to give you an example. So say you pick me, I'm the listing agent, I'm the buyer's agent, and it's time for the inspection. You found all these things. Had you had your own agent, I'd be able to negotiate with the agent and represent my seller 100% and say, no, we're not doing this, or no, we're not fixing this, or we're willing to do this much, or whatever that I thought and my sellers thought would make best sense for them. But if I'm your agent too, how do I do that? Even if my interests are pure and I want so badly to make everything work evenly, I can't, because I can't 100% represent the seller and 100% represent the buyer. So I want you to understand, when you're going to your open houses and when you're trying to look at properties and you're trying to get information, when you speak to the listing agent, you're speaking to somebody who's representing the seller, who does not have your interests at heart. So it's very important to get your own representation and make sure that that person understands what your goals and needs are and will represent you 100%. I can tell you, when I'm a listing agent and an unrepresented buyer comes in, I bring another agent in to take care of them, because I know I am the ethical person of the year, but I know it is too difficult to do. I will give you as much information as I can without compromising my seller's situation or the negotiation power, but I am not going to put them in a precarious situation to help the buyer. So that's why I get them another agent. And if I'm the buyer's agent, I am going to represent you 100% and make sure that your interests are taken care of, because I don't care what's happening on the sell side. That agent can take care of that. But I'm here to represent my buyers. So those are the top 5 questions that are asked these days in the market by our buyers. And I know that there are a ton more questions, and I'm here to answer as many of them as I can. So please jot your questions down in the notes, give me a call, send me a text, get in touch with me. I would be happy to be your buyer's agent. And if you're looking to sell a house, of course, I'd be happy to be your listing agent, but I will not be both agents. Thank you so much for watching Keeping the Real in Real Estate. Make sure that you like this video and subscribe so that you can keep up with all the things that are coming out. That's everything real estate for me. I'm keeping you honest. I'm keeping you real. I'm keeping you real in the real estate.